What's up, guys? Mike Sharp here again. This is Sharp Investing, and just before we get going, this is not investment advice. Do not invest on YouTube videos. I am just a guy, and I'm just posting my thinking on various stocks and posting my moves. So this is about the Spirit Airlines and JetBlue merger. Now, I have bought some of this stuff on November 6th. I bought about 2.5% of my portfolio. The majority of that is in February puts February calls at $12.50. I paid about $3 for those, and I do have some shares which I purchased at $11.10, I believe was the number. But the majority of it is in calls because I think the actual stock is more risky at this point, because I think that the downside on the stock price is actually much bigger than I anticipated last video. So I want to update on some of my thinking here, and just for the record. So first off, this is not an investment. I mean, for me, I separate my moves between investments, which I'm expecting to hold 3 to 5 years. That's sort of my time frame there, and then I also have trades, and which I expect to usually a lot of the time they're based on sort of shorter term events or technicals or things like that. This one is an odds play because I think the market was mispricing the odds of a JetBlue victory here, and so it's an odds play, also known as a gamble. So my new estimates here are, I think one of the things that I've renewed my thinking on is last time I was talking about how if the judge says, this is anti-competitive, you can't do this, then another buyer may come in to make a pitch for Spirit Airlines. Now, I think that might happen eventually, but if I review my timeline, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to exit this position no matter what happens in the trial, and I'm not really willing to just sit and hold Spirit Airlines and wait for another merger opportunity. So if I lose, I'm just going to take the loss and move on. So I've removed that from my odds calculation here. So if I pull them up, there's actually a new scenario here called win with conditions. Now, so the reason I put that in there is because I was listening to a podcast on it. And by the way, if you haven't listened to Yet Another Value podcast with Lionel Hutz, I suggest listening to that. It's very interesting. And then the YAV, Andrew's done a great job of following this, and he has another video where he talks to I forget what his name was, but there's a guy who's actually at the trial keeping tabs on this situation. So I would suggest listening to both of those if you're into podcasts. So the outcomes here that I think are possible are JetBlue wins outright. The judge just says it's fine. I put that at about 30% right now. And I put the potential that the Department of Justice wins at 40%. So I kept that about the same. So there's an outright win and loss. The judge just makes a decision. But what I heard in one of these podcasts was that one of the questions the judge asked was, can I rule on this? And, I'll say, yes, JetBlue can go ahead with this merger if X, Y, Z. So put some conditions on it and say, maybe they need to divest some more gates or whatever other possible remedies there could be. And from what I heard, the DOJ was basically silent. They didn't say anything to this question by the judge, but JetBlue's CEO said, definitely you can do that, right? So I think that has made it quite clear that there is a potential other possibility here. And this isn't a settlement, but this is where the judge rules yes with conditions, and then all indications are that JetBlue is willing to go ahead, within reason, I guess, that they'll remedy the situation so they can push the merger ahead. Now, so I'm going to count that as a win as well. Maybe it's worth a little bit less. I've put it at the price target. I've pulled it down a slight bit because they might cost them some revenue. But essentially, I think both of those outcomes would be wins. Now, if we look at the actual pricing, I'm going to look at it when I bought it, right? So the February calls were trading at $3, and the upside, I think, is probably around 25. Now, I don't know. This could be way off, right? I'm just putting a number there at 25. I had it at 30 before, but I've been thinking about it a bit, and I'll tell you why I've brought it down. But let's say the upside is $25. Basically, if you're buying 1250 calls, then the upside is about a 4x, and the downside is, well, 1x. You're $3. So with that in mind, the market is pricing the probability of JetBlue win, JetBlue win at about 20%, which seems very underpriced to me. Now, if we look at the actual stock price versus the downside and upside, I think it was actually, like I said, I think it's the odds aren't quite as good, because I was thinking a bit and looking at the Spirit Airlines results from Q3, and I think that airline is in big trouble right now. I mean, they can probably weather some storms, but if it keeps going like this, they might be dead if they don't get this merger. So without the merger, I think, maybe the downside's $4 on the stock. So I bought around 11. That would be a $7 downside. And then if I think the $25 is the upside in case of a win, you have about a 2-to-1. Is that right? Well, you triple your money basically. So 3-to-1 on the upside, and then obviously 1 on the downside. So I think the odds for me, based on those outcomes, they were favoring the calls. So that's what I purchased. Now, this isn't a recommendation. It's totally different right now as I'm recording this. I think the last trade was just around $13 on Friday the 24th. So the odds of all this has changed. But I guess I'll talk about why. Now I'll talk about why I think $25 is maybe the upside here. Now one of the viewers pointed out correctly that I misstated the upside last time. I said I think it was 33, but that's the full price. But part of that's been paid already, so we think the full price at the end of this merger would be more like $30. But one of the risks that exists now is that if this goes through, JetBlue is probably in big trouble, right? Like, I'm doing a quick, back in the napkin EV to EBITDA calculation. Right now, JetBlue is trading at about 6.6, and Spirit is much higher, like over 40, just because they don't have any EBITDA these days almost. But if you combine the companies just without even taking on more debt to actually pay for the merger, the EV to EBITDA looks like it's about 13.5. And so if you add the debt on top of that, it might be pushing 17, which is way too high for an airline, if you ask me. So if this goes through, JetBlue is going to be a distressed business. If it doesn't go through, Spirit is going to be a distressed business. So this is a pretty messy situation based on the current sort of profitability environment. So bringing back to why I brought the number down to 25 is I think one of the risks that's emerged here is that JetBlue wants to renegotiate this deal, or they might want to. They haven't said anything about that, but it's possible they might go, this is crazy for us to pay $3.8 billion for an airline that doesn't even have any EBITDA. So obviously it's not easy to get out of contract once you've signed it. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, the sort of get out of the contract, I forget what the term is, but to get out of the contract, they have to pay about $400 million now correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but the last I think I read was $400 million. So basically they can pull the deal and pay out $400 million. Now, if I was JetBlue, I would say, I'm paying $3.8 billion. I've got a $400 million penalty here if I cancel this. So, well, if I renegotiate for below 3.4 billion, then I'm ahead, right? Like if I renegotiate at 3 billion, take the 400 million hit, I'm still up by another 400 million. If I get the price down there, because I think what's happened is the leverage has shifted a little bit. When this deal first happened, Spirit had the leverage because they were being, two different companies were trying to buy them, so they had the leverage. But now it's shifted because the Frontier option seems to have sort of, it's basically gone right now, and Spirit needs to do this merger or else they might go under, right? So they've lost a lot of their leverage, if you ask me. And I think JetBlue can come back and say, you know what, instead of 3.8, we'll pay 2.8, and Spirit would just have to eat it. So that being said, I think what's going to happen is if this trial is a success for JetBlue, you're not going to get the full $30. I'm guessing we won't see the first, like, close to $30 as the sort of price that materializes after the decision comes down. I'm thinking maybe it'll go to 25 because the market's sort of going, yeah, is it going to be renegotiated? We don't really want to pay full price for this. So I think we'll get a lower number. That was a long way of saying I'm bringing the number down by $5. So if we look at the probabilities here, you still see the expectations quite strong here at 42%. It's down from where I had it before at 69%. So that's an expectation. If, let's say, you did 1,000 of these and these deals hit those probability levels, you'd end up being up by a net, an average of 42%. But that's not going to happen. We're going to get one outcome, and maybe it's up a fair amount or it's down a fair amount. So that's why I'm saying it's basically a gamble. But if you look at the annualized rates, these are pretty good annualized rates for like because this is going to be 1 to 2 months turnaround. I'm guessing if the judge sticks to what he said and he's going to make a very quick decision. Now that brings to the last risk here. The last risk in owning these calls is that the judge actually takes longer to make his decision, and my February calls expire worthless, and then they would go to zero. So that's maybe the major risk here. But yeah, so this is one of the moves I've done recently. I'm just sort of waiting for the outcome. The price of the stock is up since I bought it, but that's totally irrelevant because I'm not going to sell this until the verdict comes down. So the price of the stock can do whatever it wants in the meantime. Like if it comes down to $8 again, I might add to the position, but other than that, the stock price doesn't really matter. Okay, well, I think that's it. I hope you guys got something from that video. Let me know what you think, if I'm way off base on something in the comments. But anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.